The small town of Glenwood had always carried an unspoken weight, an air of tension that lingered beneath its quaint streets and charming facades. It was a town where everyone smiled but spoke in hushed tones, where history clung to the walls like an old photograph, faded but impossible to ignore. For Mariah Carter, Glenwood wasn't just a town. It was her entire world. It was where she was born, where her parents had worked tirelessly to give her a better future, and where she now found herself fighting a battle she hadn't asked for. Mariah was 27, a teacher at the local high school, and one of only a handful of Black residents in the predominantly white town. She'd returned to Glenwood after college with a vision: to give back to the community, to inspire young minds, and to show her students that there was a world beyond the narrow streets they called home. But she quickly learned that some walls weren't built with brick and mortar. They were built with prejudice, ignorance, and fear. The first incident was small, almost unnoticeable, like the whisper of a storm on the horizon. During her first week at Glenwood High, she'd noticed how some parents avoided meeting her eyes during the open house. Others asked subtle but cutting questions. "What made you decide to come back here?" Or, "Are you sure you're comfortable teaching our kids?" Mariah had brushed it off. She told herself it was her imagination, a symptom of her insecurities rather than the town's biases. She was determined not to let it affect her, but the whispers grew louder. Her breaking point came during a history class. They were discussing the civil rights movement, a topic Mariah had approached with both excitement and apprehension. She wanted her students to understand not just the facts, but the emotions and struggles of those who had fought for equality. She'd brought in photographs, speeches, and even a recording of Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. As she played the recording, she noticed a boy in the back row, Cole Henderson, snickering under his breath. Cole was one of the star athletes at Glenwood High, a senior with an easy smile and an arrogance that came from knowing he was untouchable. His father was on the school board, and his family name carried weight in the town. "Something funny, Cole?" Mariah asked, her tone sharp but controlled. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Nah, just thinking how none of this really matters. I mean, it's all in the past, right? Why do we have to keep talking about it?" The classroom fell silent. The other students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting between Mariah and Cole. Mariah took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We talk about it because the past shapes the present. Understanding history helps us understand the world we live in today." Cole shrugged. "I just don't get why we have to feel guilty about stuff we didn't even do." The words hit Mariah like a slap. It wasn't the first time she'd heard something like that, but it still stung. She wanted to respond, to tell him how dangerous it was to dismiss history, how privilege blinded people to the struggles of others. But before she could say anything, another voice cut through the tension. "That's easy for you to say," said Jada Williams, one of Mariah's few Black students. Jada was a sophomore, bright and outspoken, with a fierce determination that reminded Mariah of herself at that age. "You've never had to deal with this stuff, so of course it doesn't matter to you." Cole turned to Jada, his smirk fading into a scowl. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't get it," Jada shot back. "You don't have to worry about people judging you for your skin color or treating you differently because of it." "That's not my fault," Cole snapped. "I didn't choose to be white any more than you chose to be Black." The classroom erupted into murmurs, the tension boiling over. Mariah raised her hand, her voice firm. "That's enough, both of you." The room fell silent again, but the damage was done. The air was thick with unspoken words, with anger and frustration that couldn't be neatly resolved in a single class period. Mariah dismissed the students early, her mind racing with a mix of emotions: anger at Cole's ignorance, pride in Jada's courage, and a deep sadness for the reality they were all living in. The incident didn't stay confined to the classroom. By the next day, it was the talk of the school and the town. Some parents called the principal, complaining that Mariah was pushing an agenda and creating division. Others praised her for addressing important issues. The school board held an emergency meeting, and Mariah was called in to explain herself. She sat across from the board members, her hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding. Mr. Henderson, Cole's father, leaned forward, his expression stern. "We've had some concerns, Miss Carter," he began, his tone measured but icy. "Some parents feel that your teaching methods are controversial." "Controversial?" Mariah echoed, her voice calm but firm. "I'm teaching history. These are facts, not opinions." Mr. Henderson's lips tightened. "Be that as it may, we have to consider the comfort of all our students. Perhaps you could find a way to discuss these topics without making anyone feel targeted." Mariah stared at him, a mixture of disbelief and anger bubbling inside her. "With all due respect, Mr. Henderson, the discomfort some people feel isn't because of me. It's because they're being forced to confront things they'd rather ignore." The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of Mariah's life. She faced passive-aggressive comments from colleagues, icy stares from certain parents, and even an anonymous note left in her mailbox that read, "Go back to where you came from." But she also received quiet support, a kind word from Jada, a thank you note from another student, a reassuring smile from the janitor who had always treated her like family. Mariah knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Racism wasn't something that could be defeated in a single battle. It was a war, fought in small moments of courage and defiance. She didn't have all the answers, but she had her resolve. She wouldn't let the weight of Glenwood's history crush her spirit. Instead, she would keep fighting, not just for herself, but for Jada, for every student who felt unseen or unheard, and for the town she still dared to believe could change. Because sometimes, even in the darkest places, a single spark could light the way.